Okay, this is the second tutorial video of our shape composition. And so far we've built up a lot of these shapes. And what I'm trying to do is do kind of a simple basic shape composition version of this piece by James Jean. First thing I did was I really blurred it out and then sharpened the blur a little bit. So I'm really looking at just the shapes and the colors, not so much the individual detail or content. I built up shapes, stealing the color directly from the pixels in the blurred layers, and I'm building it up. The problem is, as I build it up, it becomes harder and harder to see what I'm trying to match. So there's a few things we can do for that. The first thing I like to do is to use not just Photoshop, but also use Preview. So I go back to my folder where I have my reference photo, and I'm going to double click just my original JPEG to open it up in Preview. And I'm going to just sneak that into a corner that I can click anytime to be able to see it. Another option for that is using what's called the navigator, or simply opening it up in Photoshop and keeping it as a floating window. So I can also open it with Photoshop, so I don't have to click on it, and then just pull it out as a new tab that's just floating out there, and shrink it, just so I have that reference somewhere off to the side while I'm working. And then you arrange your workspace accordingly. So you can do that either within Photoshop or within Preview. I'll usually use Preview because it takes up less memory. For some reason, this new version of Preview makes it hard to like shrink the box accordingly. All right, so now that I have that, I remember, oh, there's something in here I might want to do. So then what you often have to do as well is turn off. Remember that you can turn off and on your layers. And if you need to, you can even make your layers different opacities, even just temporarily, so you can look through them. Now the only problem with that is it messes with your color selections. So I just prefer kind of turning them off. I'm using the shape tools. I simply, whenever I draw a new shape with the shape tools, it gives me a new layer. I double click in there to pick the color. I can steal it directly. I hit Command T, and I'm able to transform it. And this is really the practice we need. I right click within the transform box, and I can do more specialized transforming, like warping or distorting. All fun tools for making clean dynamic shapes. Because I'm dealing with a symmetrical image, I can also just duplicate it as is. So I'll take this whole layer, do Command J, Command T, flip it horizontally, move it over right there. Then the shapes around it, same thing, just keep building it up. Now this shape behind, it's a strange shape. It's not really like a circle. I could combine it with multiple shapes, but this might be a good area where I use the custom shape tool, especially for an organic shape like this that's very curvy. If it was just angular, I could use the polygon tool and say, okay, it has 4 sides, and that will give me a square, right? And then I just use warp to make it into kind of a wedge. But what if I say, okay, it has 6 sides, and then I get a hexagon, and I could use that, and then I could transform it, and I could warp it, but it's always going to feel somewhat sharp-edged, because that's what the geometric shape tool does. So instead, I'm going to use a different tool. because it's really hard to make an oval into this shape with kind of undercuts and different shapes. So instead, let me go back in my history a little bit. I'm going to use what's called the custom shape tool. So it's the last option under the shape tool, and then up on the toolbar at the top, or the options bar, you'll see this drop down of all these kind of clip art vectors, even a copyright and a trademark and a speech bubble. The one I like by far the best, though they all have their different purposes, like the wavy box, is this kind of cloud star shape. Because it can be manipulated into almost anything. So when you draw that shape, and then I'll steal the color, and I transform it, even with just tools like distort, but especially with tools like warp, I can really almost form this into any organic shape that's available, or that I can imagine, because it has all these undercuts that I can exploit or soften. Now it takes a lot of manipulation, but that's why we're doing these exercises, so you can kind of see the power you have. Now if you're having trouble working with it, simply take its opacity down, because you know it's the right color, and then transform it again to get it into the shape you want. So for those really tough organic shapes that aren't hard-edged, I recommend the custom shape tool and just doing a lot of warping. Now this is where Illustrator is much better, and we do have Illustrator tools here that we could use to actually move individual points around on that shape. But in Photoshop, that's pretty clunky. So using just the warp tools and the transform tools is how I'd like you to mess with it right now. And again, does not need to be perfect. Just getting a feel for these things. Remember, you can click and drag your layers. You can have them sitting on top of each other. Let me turn this one back up all the way. And so you need them to all be placed in the right order and in the right places. Now I'll use that custom shape tool again, but this time I'll make it really long. And maybe I'll flip it. And just really playing with distortions. Now how do you steal the color? I can turn these layers in the way off and still steal the color. And then when it shows, it will show that color. Also, the custom shape tool can be used for outline kind of shapes. So you see this hoop at the bottom there? This shape gives me a good option for that. Steal the color. Transform it. Warp it. So I don't have to make this out of a lot of little ovals. I have kind of an open-ended shape that I can work with. And remember, you can always overlap multiple shapes of the same color to get that effect. So now I'll use the custom shape tool again, but I'll use my favorite one. With the exact same color. Don't even change the color. And start warping it. I don't need to worry about the parts that are going to go underneath other layers. All right. I can duplicate it. Move it over. So just the shape tool and the move tool, it's basically what we're using to get the image. And I'm looking at my little images to see like other major things that are important. And I'm trying to keep them as simple and as direct as possible. So maybe like this. Double click inside, pick the color. Okay, now maybe over here. No, not that. Let's just use triangles for fun. And then use the transform tools and warp to soften them out. So you can soften hard shapes, but they'll always feel very mechanical. So I think the better choice for that is, again, probably the custom shape tool. Now, if you only had Photoshop at your disposal, this would be a good way to create logos. It'd be a good way to create anything that you needed perfectly clean edges on. But the problem is, because it's Photoshop, it will ultimately always be defined by a pixel grid. But because they are the vector tools within Photoshop, based on the resolution you tell it to be, it will always redraw these shapes as perfectly cleanly as possible within that given pixel grid. So I could always just increase the image of the resolution of the image, and it will automatically increase the resolution of each shape. All right, I'm just going to do these two little root-like legs. And I'll do that out of just regular ellipses. And then I'll do the background, and then I'll be done. So we're not trying to do anything too amazing here, at least within just meeting the parameters of the exercise. It's really just getting introduced to these principles. Now we are building up lots of different layers, but ultimately we want to be able to turn off all the background layers so we only have the shape showing and have it still represent what we like about the composition. So that's the challenge, and we have to do that all the way to the background. And with the background, I'll just show you one last thing we can do, which is to fill the shape with a gradation other than just a solid color. But that's something that's going to be most helpful just in the background.